Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. If you have been sleeping under a rock, you will know. Well, you won't know. This is rough. I don't know why I'm struggling. You know what? We're keeping it. I'm a human. We have flaws. New Game Informer cover is Forspoken, the exciting new joint from Square Enix, from Luminous Productions that did Final Fantasy 15. And I assembled a crew here today to talk about it. We have the, I said no to Inquisitor, but Jill Grote in the building. What is your nickname for this show?
I don't know. Let's go with like illustrious.
Ooh, I like illustrious. Okay, you may have to fight Van Aken for that, but you both can be illustrious, I think.
So. You're way more illustrious than me.
Today, I'm feeling it.
Yeah. and then of course, you know where you love her, K-Star, Kim Wallace. Hello.
Here we are. Ready.
We are ready. Indeed.
What you got?
Is that one of the voice lines from Forspoken?
Oh yeah.
Correct.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Frey is sassy. She ain't taking it.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of Forspoken, Kim, Jill, and I had the pleasure of meeting with the folks over at Square and Luminous a couple of weeks ago now, maybe a month ago now, and we got the lowdown on Forspoken, which was Project Athia back in the day, right? It was one of the exciting showcase pieces from the PlayStation 5 press. I think it was the first press conference they had when it was like FF16 and stuff like that too. And we've seen trailers here and there, but I feel like this is the first really meaty, like hands-off preview that we got to see. Jill did a preview of it a couple months ago. At this point, something like that.
Sometime before this, yeah.
Yeah, but we got to see gameplay and we got to talk to the team. And let's kick this segment off with let's talk a little bit about the story and what we saw here. So Jill or Kim, if you want to jump into that.
Yeah, I can go ahead. What we knew sort of beforehand was sparse.
Yes.
The main character's name is Frey Holland. She is a New Yorker. She is in a bad place currently. Got maybe some law troubles coming her way. Got some bad things on all sides. She is turning 21 and somehow magically poofs and is in Athia and goes around and fights dragons and whatnot.
It's basically
as one is wont to do.
As one does.
It's basically a Wizard of Oz story, right?
Yeah,
like,
very much.
She wakes up in a fantastical land, is like, I just want to get the F home, baby.
Literally, probably
to her cat Homer, who was like a huge star of the trailers, right? The footage
who's fine. Who's totally fine. Anyone who's worried about Homer back in...
we can confirm we asked that question. Me and Jill were very concerned about Homer.
Of course.
For this particular exclusive viewing for Game Informer, we learned a little bit more, and some of that's going to be revealed in some stuff coming up later this month. But what we can talk about is we know that Frey lands in Athia, and Athia is having a bad time right now because they have this thing called the Break, which is a sort of like fog that's permeated the land, and it's turning everyone into zombies and like mutating animals and transforming landscapes and everything. And for some reason, Frey is immune to this, as is Van Aken's cat.
Yes.
Speaking of cats.
Gets me every time. I love it so much.
Yeah,
I haven't seen her all day. As soon as we start podcasting.
As Jill mentioned, like part of the game is going to be figuring out why Frey is like immune to this break. Why doesn't it work on her? And because the break doesn't work on her, suddenly she's in this unique position where she can save this world, which is being governed by like these evil magic sorceresses called Tantas, who we saw the Tanta of Strength, and they introduced the Tanta of Virtue, Prav, at the Game Awards. Justice, sorry. Virtue, justice, they kind of did
similar things, yeah.
So it's a crazy kind of like fish out of water adventure. You wake up one day and then you're like, I've got the task of this world on my shoulders. So Frey's like very reluctant because she's kind of just like, what the heck is going on? But But to make matters worse, she wakes up with a freaking talking cuff on her arm who is just like causing her grief. My favorite part is Square's like, yeah, he'll comment on how you're playing. So if you're like bad at dodging, this little cuff's gonna tell you what's up. Be like, dodge better, baby. Do it.
Can you imagine that, having that in Elden Ring? I think I would have returned the game.
Oh, I can't wait till I get
Rise,
all the
Vanish.
bad comments. Like, why didn't you dodge that? Why didn't you? But he also helps you out too. He'll let you know that a spell's incoming. If you're lost, he'll get you back on the right path. But they kind of have this very contentious relationship because he's really trying to guide Faye and tell her, like, you are in a unique position. Step into this role of this world. And, you know, she's not so sure that that's what she wants to do. You know, it's you wake up in a crazy land and you're just like, I want to get home.
Right. And Frey is from a background where she's not used to relying on people and not used to trusting people and having to kind of get through on her own. And so getting put in this situation, she's all about like, how do I figure out what's going on with me? Not like, how do I save the new world I'm in from this zombie fog, you know, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the confrontation between Cuff and Frey seem to be that he is very much of Athia and he cares very much about its people and the land and what's happening there. And he's like anyone would be like, you could save us, save us. And she's like, nah, I'm out. Like, this is wild. There's dragons, there's monsters. I'm not having this.
And something that Luminous Productions, when we were talking with them in our conversations, what they really wanted with Frey was an imperfect hero. They didn't want her to come in and be like, I'm going to save the day. They wanted you to see this person who has flaws, who feels like it could be someone you know, or even like yourself, who's going through their own stuff, and you're stepping into the, like, how would you respond and what would you do? And she's not always going to say the right things. In fact, I think when even the footage we saw of it, we should say we got like a hands-off demo of close to 30 minutes of that we saw. And you know, sometimes she says stuff and you're like, girl, get it together, you know? Like, she's just trying, but that's it. She's trying to figure out a lot of things in her life. And I think, you know, they call it a journey of self-discovery. Obviously, I think we all know she'll get there eventually, but she's not going to just come into this world and be like, I'm here to save the day,
Captain America type,
and always do the right thing. I think like that she's going to be an imperfect protagonist, and that's what we're going to see.
Right, and I think that also connects to the Tantas, like we talked about a little bit, but like as far as I remember, they used to be good. They used to watch over Athia in a positive way, and the one that we saw, the Tanta of Justice, she was Prav, excuse me, she didn't care about good or helping people at all. She was scary.
She was
terrifying,
comically so.
We saw a cutscene of her, and guys, absolutely terrifying. And I can't remember the last time a villain had like that impact on me. She just goes Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde on you very quickly, because she's fighting herself in a sense, because she was, as Jill said, like of justice, the Tanta of Justice, and she, you know, ruled on people and tried to be fair. And all of a sudden now she has this corrupt sense taking over that's like, I don't care, you're guilty no matter what, and I don't need evidence, and it's against everything. But you see that version of her fighting herself, and oh my god, Pollyanna McIntosh, the voice actress, she's from The Walking Dead, just nails the role so well. I'm gonna tell you, people are gonna be talking about this character. I have nightmares of her.
And it's a little bit more cartoony than say like a villain in like The Last of Us, right? But I do think it works in the theme of the world not taking itself too seriously in Athia. So I liked what I saw, that even though there was a couple times I was like, oh, okay, that's where we're going with this. All right.
It reminded me though of the evil sorceresses that you see in like the Disney movies, where they're like,
yeah.
Somebody's gonna tag that laugh.
It'll probably be me.
But
Flip it.
For sure.
But you know what I mean? Just like having that moment of like really embracing the evil and leaning into it.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how that evolves, and that's definitely something that made me go, okay, I'm interested in this game now because, like we said, there wasn't a ton out there. Um, Tanta Prav inhabited this new area that we had not seen yet, and I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I always screw it up. Jill, what is the name of the new area that we saw?
Avoalet.
Avoalet. Avoalet. Thank you. Yeah.
Have a wallet.
Have a
Have a
wallet.
wallet.
Have a wallet.
Have a wallet.
I could use one of those, honestly.
All the
Preferably with
zombies just passing out leather flaps everywhere. It's weird.
yeah. But this was an area that I think most people have seen at this point, the kind of deserty, arid space that they've been putting out there for Forspoken, but this was a little bit more. It had more blue tones in it. I think it was a little bit greener, that kind of stuff. What do you, Joe? What do you remember from what we saw from the new area? What stood out
Yeah.
to you?
I mean, I like so perfect. You're just doing all my work for me for promoting. I have something coming up, deep diving into all of this.
Yeah.
But it is definitely a realm that is lush and green and thriving and beautiful, and it's such a stark contrast to this like dry, horrific, everything's dying sort of landscape that we've seen so far. But it's also like it is. Uh, like Prav rules in this particular area. It's her realm. So it is this sort of weird concept of like thriving and doing well, and that just being sort of a twisted like comparison to how things are actually going in the world. Like it's a very interesting thing, and all of the like you still run into things that are mutated. You've got enemies that should be nice, lovely creatures of the woodland realm, but they're not. They're really not. Um, and so it is just this beautiful space, and it's uh part of this big open world that this game is going to be. So it does give you a nice sense of like, hey, there will be some nice places to explore in here. It won't all just be featureless kind of dry desert.
Right. And I think we got a sense of what is actually going to fill that open world space a little bit more, right? Some of the activities that we'll actually encounter. There are these were they considered the break in those spheres that came down and like gave like or spawned like harder enemies? Do you remember what that was called? Either of you?
They do have break storms,
Break storms. Thank you. That's
which
what it was.
are are those things that kind of roll in big like billowing fog rolls in and things just turn up to 11 and everything's trying to kill you, and hopefully you get rewards that are worthwhile for that. We do have a sense that the world has things sprinkled in it. So as we were watching this preview, we saw just like we saw chests around the world that you could try to open, and then when you tried to open it, things would attack you. Or we saw a little mini dungeon, which I'll jump into later as well for coverage. We saw shelters called refuges, and those, kind of as the name suggests, kind of safe spaces to craft a little bit, check out the world, get some lore in there. And guild towers, or just guilds, also gonna be pointing you towards more information and more things for your journey. And it's hard to get a sort of sense of how big the world is and how full it's going to be, but they definitely have put some thought into what people will do if they're not, going directly towards the main objective.
Yeah, a lot of the side activities that we saw seem to either be challenges for those who want to face like big bads and really test their skills with the system. And then the other point that I wanted to make is a lot on expanding the lore of this world. Like you'll see a bunch of abandoned villages that you can visit, and those will give you more information on the people who lived there, because this was a world once that was populated, thriving, but the people who got stuck in the break, they've all turned to zombies now, and it's creepy. But there is a safe spot called Sepal.
Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where that's the only place that people have gone for that the humans now live, because that's the only safe spot where the break isn't affected. And we were told that, Frey will be going back and forth here, really talking to some of the NPCs and getting more information through that as well. Like we said, there's another thing. What's the God, I'm trying to think of the name of it. I think Jill would know.
Oh, I'm ready. Hit me.
Oh, you ready? I can't think of the name, but like the academies where you can like look at scientific research or the magic research that
I think that's the
scientists
guild stuff.
that's the guild stuff. Okay, yeah.
Mhm.
So you'll find out stuff there and you can look into their research and kind of find out more about this world and kind of maybe where it took some of these dark turns and about the people in it, which has me interested. To say the least. I always like that feeling of having a world that feels really fleshed out and thought through. And the fantastical setting, I'm
Yeah.
excited for it.
For
And the
sure.
nice thing too that we saw during that I really appreciated for like open world stuff is when you discovered the mention of a location in, looking through manuscripts or looking through like information of any kind, your map would pop up and those locations would pop up in the map even if you haven't explored that area yet.
Mhm.
So you have a reason to go to that location instead of it just being fog of war. You have no idea what's there, but you have to like wander around, which, I think that's really cool. And especially if you're really interested in finding more lore or,
Mhm.
you want to make some health potions because you're really low and you haven't been in this area before, you know where you can go to craft those. So,
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit more of a guided experience, but one I'm excited to jump
Yeah.
into. So, um, speaking of getting around the open world, one of the other draws of this game and the pre-release stuff that we've seen is the traversal, how you actually get around, and we got more of a sense of that in what we saw in the preview coverage. I think there's a lot of potential there, and that's kind of what I'm most excited for, right? Because I think I've seen some people online kind of bemoan the fact that it looks relatively empty, but with what we've seen plus the traversal mechanics, I think it'll fill more than I think people are expecting, right? It feels like if they nail it right, we didn't get a chance to play it. I want to, but like it felt like they're going for like a high fantasy version of something like Sunset Overdrive to a certain extent, right? With that very
Huh.
fluid movement, bounding up
Almost looks a
walls,
little
like that
like
kind of stuff.
Infamous to me as well.
Yeah, that's a good call out too. Yeah, I think
Infamous too.
those are the kind of the high points to hit, right? But like we don't know, we didn't get to play it, but um, and we saw in the trailer too, right? Like she has like a water surfboard that she calls out to go quickly in water and stuff like that. So I'm
Just
curious,
looks so stylish and cool
right?
going
yeah.
through
Yeah,
the
Yeah.
world like that. Like for me, what it's going to come down to though, and so I'm very anxious to get actual hands-on with the game, because how that feels is really going to be important, and how smooth all of those jumps are to get to ledge. Will be where the satisfaction really comes from of controlling Frey. So it's hard for us to tell up front, but it looks real cool.
right.
I'll put it that way.
Yeah, it's definitely the high point for me of watching that
Mhm.
was like, oh, this could be, especially seeing it string together and stuff like that. I was like, okay, this is something I can really get into because I love, like I said, Sunset. Like I love some of these other games with the like Spider-Man has amazing locomotion, like Ratchet and Clank. I'm naming a lot of Insomniac games because they're great. But
Yeah.
um, Jill, did you have any thoughts on traversal before we move to the next subject?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts sort of echo everybody else's. It looks fantastic, and if it feels as good as it looks, it's going to be like spectacular. But we have no idea how that really works in actual action, so it'll be great.
We
Yeah,
should mention there
hopefully.
is fall damage.
Yes, there is
Mm,
fall damage,
But
and
you can use a spell to like
yeah,
cushion it. So like a gravity spell so you're not falling
and
and
it's
hitting
not
it.
like you don't have endless amounts of magic ability either. So you do have to like wonder, is that going to feel limiting or restricting, or is it going to be interesting the way you have to sort of think about like, okay, I can't jump off this particular cliff because I don't have enough magic to cushion me when I fall
right.
and I'll die.
Because
Mhm.
I think that's the fun of something, and that adds stakes, right? Because that's kind of the fun Elden Ring is fully in my mind right now. I apologize, but like in Elden Ring, right? Like you see a
What are
cliff
you,
and you're like,
Dantak?
no, I am very
He rips off
yeah.
his mask. Haha.
Gotcha, everyone.
There's gonna be another.
But it is that thing, right? It's that risk reward of like, that looks like I could make that jump, but I also have like 50,000 runes. Like not in a similar vein, maybe, but like that it could add stakes in Forspoken, where it's
Mhm.
like, I could try to do this environmental puzzle, but like, am I really ready, or am I just gonna fall on my face? So I'm curious about that. Jill,
The
sorry,
I was
go
gonna say
ahead.
the parkour also is used in combat as well. We should
Yeah.
mention that
Mhm.
that's how you can get out of the way of a lot of attacks that are incoming. You can't spam it obviously because it is limited. But it is going to be a part of the experience of how you move around the battlefield and using it to your advantage in those ways.
Yeah, for sure. And well, speaking of combat, we also got a really great taste of what that is going to be moment to moment, right? We know that there's no metal swords, axes, any of that. There's no weapons, right? It is
Well,
literally
she's a
just
fire sword, let's
spells.
be fair.
True, nothing like no physical weapons, right? They are
Mhm.
magic all the way through, and there's three types of magic that we know of right now, if I'm not mistaken. There's attack magic, support magic, and then I don't know what they were called, the
I
big
don't.
hitter attacks.
Yeah, super
Yeah,
special attack, top
yeah.
of the pyramid magic.
Square, if you want to use that, we've copyrighted it already. But Jill actually wrote a piece for us on Game Informer. I know we keep promoting your stuff, but as we should,
Go for
right?
it.
um where we talk about the spells and list them all out. Do you want to jump in here, Jill?
Yeah. So I will maybe not list all of them, but we did talk a little bit about the sword, which is called Slice. It's this very, very visually pleasing sort of mix between like a medieval like longsword and like a lightsaber. But that's just like this beautiful red glowing, and the red sparks drip and fall everywhere, and it's just really cool to watch. Uh, and that's like an attack magic, and a lot of the attack magic seem to have a sort of um infinite ammo is not exactly correct, but like a feeling that you can use it over and over and over again
Mm,
without a cooldown. So you get a lot of shooting things out of your hands at various enemies, and they're going to do minimal damage, but you're going to be able to call on those when everything else is sort of cooling down. Like a support magic is looks like it's going to be things that sort of buff you or help protect you, things that aren't directly damaging enemies, but you can kind of mix and match and get some of the attacks and some of the support like helping each other.
hmm
One I remember in particular is like a water column that you can call up from the ground and just kind of stand behind it while people try to shoot into you, and you're like, haha, I'm behind my wall of water, you can't do
yeah,
nothing.
yeah. There
um
was some too that did do some AoE attacks that I
Yeah.
really like, that were
yeah, yeah,
really flashy and stuff. So it is an interesting mix in that way.
yeah. What was oh, there were other ones that were some of my favorite things is just like stepping back and letting other people do fighting sometimes. So there's one called Legion that summons these like fiery soldiers who just attack your enemies for you. And I'm like, that's fantastic.
I
Let's have
always
more
like
of
when I
that.
can make people fight for me.
Yeah.
Weirdly
You do the
remember
work.
Cork really liked that too. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah.
uh
So
yeah, and then we have these like super ultra fantastic magic combos that do something incredible, but you can do them like once and then you don't get them again for a really really long time, so you
Cool
have to
down.
really plan when you're going to use them, because if you waste it on like a couple of zombies and then later you run into a huge mini boss, like you're out of luck.
yeah.
And the one that we saw was called Conflagration, and I will save what that does for anyone who wants
Oh,
to
you
read
little
that.
Oh,
tease.
you tease.
Oh,
But
girl.
it's worth it. So check it out.
Yeah, there is a really cool in the gameplay video we posted alongside Jill's awesome piece. There is an awesome ability that you'll have to see to believe. So very excited about that. Yeah, I was curious how combat worked in this. They're definitely it's one of those things with traversal again, right? Too, where it's like I need to feel it because it looks great, but it's
Yeah.
like I need to see how these all synergize and work together. But the spectacle is unequivocally there with
Mhm.
the particle effects
Well,
and the
Square has a
switching of it.
reputation of their games looking very good, and then, like I said, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I think for me, my other concern is just, and I asked them about this, is just like Final Fantasy 15 was very much their first time tackling like more open landscapes, and they're calling this like full open world. So can they, Luminous handle a big open world setup like this and keep it engaging? Because, like I said, there's a lot of, we don't want like a bunch of empty areas, obviously, which is always the crux of,
Right,
trying to get that going
right.
and up.
I think that balance they strike with if traversal is fun, maybe that mitigates some of the things that maybe that mitigates some of the barren nature of the open world because you're going through it so fast. Like, we see,
Exactly.
we'll see. We don't know. Um, Speaking of concerns, though, I feel like at least in the journalism space, one of the things that Forspoken became somewhat known for is questionable representation. Right, during your preview event, Jill, um, one of the writers said that Frey's walk was hip hoppy, like
Yeah,
it's
it was the performance director.
yeah, like it um nails are used in a questionable way, we can say, right? Like, and as exciting it is that this is a black female lead, right? It does come from problematic roots of like angry orphan, like some stereotypes that we're trying to get away from in 2022. What did we learn? What did y'all learn from your time talking to the devs? Did we get to cover that at all?
So we did ask a lot about, obviously, we want to make sure to give everybody space to talk about that and to discuss concerns and make sure those are being addressed. Uh, and there are some things that I'm still wary of, and I'm going to keep an eye on for that. There are some things that it may be a non-issue, and as we play we'll discover like, oh, okay, this really wasn't that bad. As far as representation goes, they did discuss with us that they had used consultants. um we didn't get like much information in that vein, so I want to see really where that's coming from and where that uh how that ends up turning out, because those comments, the hip hop comment was particularly worrisome. But it may just be someone talking off the cuff without thinking about it, and that's really the hope. And it is absolutely fantastic to see such a female-led game with the protagonist being a woman and mm, all of the tantas being women, and it seems like a lot of the important side characters also being women. It's really cool to see. So um, that is one of the concerns about the nails, because when you do have a game that's so concentrated on women, to have something that's stereotypical, like girls like that, uh, as a mechanic is weird, and it can come off sort of unusual. They did talk to me about how that was part of Athia being taken from cultures like um Egyptian culture and that sort of, in that sort of realm. I want to say Babylonian too, but I can't remember quite off the top of my head. Where adorning one's nails was a part of the culture and a way to show your status in that culture. And so they took that from real life and put that into Athia, which is how they do with a lot of different things you can see within the world, like especially like visually and artistic art history speaking, they put a lot of that into the game as well. So it's a very possible thing that that is where that stems from, and it just sounds really bad when you're like, "Hey, this is a game full of women and you get to paint your nails." Like, So it
Right.
may just be that it sounds bad in contrast, but really the game has, while you're playing it, some good reason for that magical nail adornment, and we'll have to see about that.
For sure.
Uh, the other thing I think that is, I don't know if you mentioned this, but like I know a lot of people were worried about the banter
Mm,
and the amount of it and sort of the tone of it. And from what I saw in the preview to what I saw in this demo that we recently saw, it seemed like they toned a lot of it down, so it wasn't quite at the frequency as it was before. Um, but that's what you're gonna get. That level of that tone, that back and forth, that sassiness. That's where they're hidden.
right.
So if that's the sort of thing that's going to turn you off from the game, I didn't see anything that will calm your worries for that particular aspect. But you know, it's all going to be, they're still adjusting and they're still taking in um, different suggestions and listening to people. So we'll see where that ends up.
Right. Because
Yeah,
I like a little bit of, I like the sassy, I like the back and forth, right? But like too much is too much sometimes. Sorry, Kim, I didn't mean to
no,
cut you
I was
off.
gonna say I am similar. I have some concerns with the humor. It's so hard because we're seeing such a little slice, and I think in the scheme of thing that those conversations between Cuff and Frey are really to kind of break up some of the more serious stuff and other things she's going on to bring out like different sides of her personality. And so, because we're not seeing it in the full context of the game, it's really hard. But I think right now it is, and even with Jill's topic before of mentioning concerns, like I think it's always great to voice these concerns because they are in the process of making the game and they can go back and consider some of the stuff that they're doing. And then at the same time, too, they can be like, like I said before, it's so hard to call it on some of these things because we're only seeing a section of a game in the span of like that goes on for hours and it's
Right.
complete. So you don't know how one thing will go versus another. And um I always laugh because I cover a lot of our RPGs for us, and I used to always tell people RPG demos are the hardest because sometimes people and I think demos in general, you can pick a slamming section from a game that makes it look amazing and then the full game comes out and you're like what the heck, or vice versa. You pick a bad area to demo, like it falls flat. And so it's always tricky to know based on these what we see. What I saw, I think there's a lot of potential with the
Yeah.
world. Another good example is each region, as we said, like was governed by a specific tanta, and they all have their own twists. Like, so corruption doesn't just mean ugly, as we said. And so as we got deeper into this area, we saw the castle town that, um Ava wallet of like there, but it's all in runes, right? So, but what they did was really cool is you get up more into it, like the town is twisted completely sideways, and it's a cool way to kind of do that fairy tale aspect and warp what was once something normal and turn it into something different. But like I was even thinking, like, just for Frey to be able to explore a world that has been turned sideways makes for good, like, traversal if they do it well and right. And like I said, we didn't see an extensive part of this, but it just looked freaking cool. And I was like, that's a cool, unique, like, I just liked how everything was set up with the Tantas and showing different ways this corruption could take shape and not just making it always like what you'd expect. I think that's the other thing too. Like they could lean and go really campy into certain, fairy tale tropes and all that, but from what I saw, I didn't get that vibe. I got the vibe that they're going to be doing some cool things to kind of mess with your expectations and show you like what's happened to this world that has just like this break has just consumed and changed everything.
Yeah. And this may be a turnoff to some, but like I definitely got like almost Marvel vibes a little bit, right? Where it is playful and can be fun and
Hmm.
snarky, but there are some Marvel movies that do a good job conveying loss, like more dramatic elements, right? So it's like that could be exciting if handled correctly. And they have shown even in the time between your preview, Jill. When did you preview this game? A couple months ago?
Yeah, it was months and months ago.
It was
Yeah,
like before winter break. I think it was
that
like
sounds right.
December or something,
Yeah.
It was
Jill.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they've already shown that they're listening, right? You know, they did cut down on the banter, right? They've delayed this to October, I believe
Mhm.
now,
October
right?
11th.
Yeah, so they're gonna take another 5 months, and you know, hopefully they can internalize that feedback and make this into something special. Because I think, you know, I was excited by the potential of what we saw, and you know, I think especially with how busy the start of the year is too. Like I'm excited that they get to stave it off a little bit more and hone in on what makes this game exciting. So, um, Jill, Kim, any final thoughts before we move off of Forspoken here?
Yeah, it definitely has. I think Kim said it fantastically. Like there is potential here that makes me very, very excited. New IP is always great, and if a new IP is great, it's just this fantastic thing that because it's this new thing on the horizon that's suddenly now part of your repertoire, and you can look forward to it. Um, but we'll, we're gonna have to see. Hopefully, they work on a lot and they turn out this wonderful, beautiful thing.
Yeah, Kim.
Like that Square is taking some risks here and they're acknowledging like one thing that they said to us was when we went back and we looked at some of the stuff that we felt we could do better, narrative and characters were really one. And so they, like I said, they went out, got Gary Whitta, Rogue One fame, obviously, to realize the world and kind of start world building and deciding this. And then when he did that, then they got Amy Henning, who, gosh, Uncharted fame, Jack and Dexter, all that stuff, and um, to help then build the story even more. And then they brought in other writers, Allison Reimer and Todd Stashwick, to kind of go from there and really bring the characters to life, bring the dialogue. And I like that that's all like Western talent. Like a Japanese, Square is located in Japan. They're very into for a long time, their main series have been Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, and then they put spin-offs off of those, and they have a new IP here and there, but I haven't seen them take this aggressive of an approach and actually like tapped other people for help. That's like, maybe we don't do this best. Maybe we should find somebody else to help us with this. And I think the team also, I'll be interested. They did say half the team on Luminous Productions were from 15. So I think they had a lot of learning experiences there. Like there's some things that 15 executed very well, some things not so much, but at least they got their feet wet trying more things with an open world and realizing that they had to go beyond what they had been doing, which was like Square has been very and not a bad thing, but they've done a lot of linear projects and expanding out and like I said, even this traversal, I'm like, damn,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
you can see a little Kingdom Hearts in that.
A little bit,
A
yeah,
little bit,
yeah. I
yeah.
like that. Yeah, I think in obviously I've had a much shorter career at GI than others, but I think in my time here, I've found that the devs who are more open about the fact that they made mistakes or have learning opportunities, right? Those games tend to come out better, right? And I think if you have that mentality of I can do, like, you know, we goofed here, right? We can do better even in this production process. I think that's going to turn out that turns out better more often than not. So I'm excited to see what the fruits of that labor looks like here on October 11th. So we got a little ways to wait, but dear viewer, I know what you're thinking. Oh, I need more Forspoken. We got you. Don't you worry. Um, Jill has a lot of awesome stuff coming to the site. Kim, you do as well. You have an amazing cover story that you wrote that y'all can check out now digitally. I don't think magazines are out quite yet, but those will be at your doorstep very soon. I have a lot of 4K footage that I am going to bring y'all, which is very exciting. I love when we can get the gameplay footage to y'all.
And I have
a beautiful
nothing.
face. No, you got a cat. That's great.
I have some excitement for the game. That's what I
Yeah,
have.
there you go. Yeah,
I'm
we like
more
that.
excited about the game than I've ever been after seeing it and kind of digging in and talking with the devs. Like I said, there are some things that we discussed that like were iffy on, but at the same time, like, it looked pretty good to me so far. And if they keep working on it and you know, presenting more, I will be interested to see how many regions there actually are, how many tantas, all that. But gosh, from what we saw, like, it was nice. It was nice to finally see this game more unveiled. Let's just call it for what it is. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, so definitely go check that out. GameInformer.com/Forspoken, YouTube.com/GameInformer. You know it, you love it.